Get ready for an epic ride through the world of bodybuilding, where jaw-dropping muscle meets even bigger stories. In this video, we're counting down the 10 most beloved bodybuilders to ever walk the earth. Men who didn't just sculpt insane physiques, but who also left a lasting mark on generations with their attitude, legacy, and unbelievable feats. This isn't just about trophies or body measurements. It's about presence, influence, and real impact, both inside and outside the sport. Each name on this list is more than just a shredded body. These guys represent entire eras, styles, and mindsets. Some redefined what symmetry and conditioning could look like, while others shattered the limits of human size. And then there are those who, even without being the ultimate champions, became timeless legends thanks to their strength, charisma, or cultural role in the world of bodybuilding. And that's exactly what makes this journey so special. Beloved isn't something you measure with a tape or scale. It's about legacy. It's about heart. It's about that feeling only true icons of the sport can stir in those who follow them. Talking about bodybuilding without mentioning Arnold Schwarzenegger is like talking about rock without bringing up Elvis Presley. He wasn't just a champion. He was the guy who turned bodybuilding into a global phenomenon. At just 20 years old, he became the youngest Mr. Universe in history. And that was just the beginning. He went on to win Mr. Olympia 7 times. But more than that, he broke through prejudice, crushed language barriers, and pushed past the limits of his time. Arnold wasn't just muscle. He had vision. And that vision took him way beyond the stage. While other champions stayed within the bodybuilding niche, Arnold used the sport as a launch pad. He made it to Hollywood, starring in movies like Conan the Barbarian and The Terminator, and once again, put bodybuilders right at the center of pop culture. Suddenly, being jacked wasn't just a gym thing. It became a symbol of success, action, and movie stardom. But maybe the most impressive thing was his charisma. Arnold was a showman. He knew how to hype a crowd, how to entertain, how to connect. Behind the scenes at the Olympia, he'd get inside his competitors' heads. On stage, he'd own the audience with confident poses and that signature grin. On screen, he proved that muscles could act. And in public life, he showed the world that the discipline of an athlete could shape a political leader. What a lot of people don't realize is that he also helped popularize recreational training. His books and workout videos inspire generations to lift, not to compete, but to transform themselves. It's because of him that so many people started training without ever dreaming of stepping on stage. He brought the gym into everyday life, into homes, schools, and fitness centers around the world. And with that, he helped change millions of lives. Arnold has always been a bridge between worlds, between Europe and the US, between sports and film, between underground culture and the mainstream. He made the impossible look easy. And even after retiring from competition, he kept giving back to the sport, running events, launching the Arnold Classic, and using his voice to promote health and wellness. He didn't walk away from bodybuilding. He elevated it. And the craziest part? Even today, decades later, he's still the most recognizable name in bodybuilding. Ask anyone who doesn't follow the sport. Who's the most famous bodybuilder? The answer is still Arnold. And that's not a coincidence. He built a legacy that goes beyond the body and the trophies. It's a legacy of mindset, ambition, and real-world impact. Now I want to hear from you. What's the most iconic moment in Arnold's journey, in your opinion? Was a win on stage? A movie scene? Maybe a classic line like "I'll be back"? Or just the way he inspired you to start training? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If Arnold was the face of bodybuilding, Ronnie Coleman was the craziest body this sport has ever seen. At a shredded 300 pounds, 135 kilograms, he didn't just step on stage. He landed like a freaking titan. He racked up 8 straight Mr. Olympia titles from 1998 to 2005 in an era where Ronnie didn't just win, he steamrolled the competition. His physique looked out of this world, massive beyond belief, yet insanely detailed with razor-sharp cuts. But the most mind-blowing thing about Ronnie wasn't just his body. It was how he built that monster in the mirror. He didn't train heavy. He trained impossible, We're talking 800 pounds, 365 kilograms, squats, 495 pounds, 225 kilograms, incline bench presses, over 800 pounds deadlifts. And he did all that grinning, yelling his legendary catchphrases, "Yep, buddy," and "lightweight, baby," like he wasn't lifting half car, like it was just fun and games. Ronnie was pure brute strength with the charisma of a giant. While a lot of bodybuilders were serious and reserved, he was full-on joy. He trained with insane intensity, but also with passion, energy, and an infectious vibe. Watching his training videos made you want to hit the gym immediately. It wasn't just about the body, it was about mindset. He made the impossible feel reachable, as long as you gave it everything you had. On stage, Ronnie was a beast. The crowd went nuts the moment he walked out. His back was so wide it looked like it could block the sun, his legs were tree trunks, and his front double biceps pose, nearly unbeatable. He's the guy who reset the standard of what big meant in bodybuilding. After him, judges had to rethink what maximum muscle mass really looked like. But that size came at a cost. After retiring, Ronnie had to undergo multiple spine surgeries, direct consequences of years lifting beyond human weights. Even now, with chronic pain and physical limitations, he keeps that same smile on his face. That says everything about how much he loves this sport, to the point where he says he'd do it all over again, even knowing what it would cost. Ronnie wasn't just a champion. He was a phenomenon, a game changer. Before him, being big was an advantage. After him, it became the standard. He changed bodybuilding forever, inspired thousands of athletes, and is still worshipped by fans around the world. His presence is still felt, whether in interviews, fitness expos, or those epic gym videos that just never stop going viral. In a sport where pushing limits is the norm, Lee Haney was the master of balance. 8-time consecutive Mr. Olympia champ from 1984 to 1991, he ruled with a physique that blended size, symmetry, and aesthetics like few ever have. In an era that was shifting from classic to modern, Lee proved that you could grow without sacrificing harmony. That's why, even today, he's still considered one of the most beautifully proportioned bodybuilders in history. Unlike athletes who went all in on mass or extreme conditioning, Lee built a physique that looked like it was drawn with a ruler and compass. Wide shoulders, tight waist, a back that flared like a hang glider, and legs sculpted to perfection. His look was powerful, but also elegant. He didn't intimidate, he impressed. He was a living masterpiece, and it showed every time he stepped on stage. But what really made Lee Haney stand out was his calm, strategic mindset. While others chased intensity at all costs, he trained smart, took care of his body, and focused on long-term health. His famous motto? Train to stimulate, not annihilate. In other words, train with purpose, not self-destruction. And that approach paid off, not just in titles, but in longevity and well-being. Lee also brought a more positive and faith-driven spirit to bodybuilding. A man of deep belief, he often shared messages about discipline, purpose, and self-awareness. Outside the gym, he got involved in community projects, led health programs, and even served as chairman of the President's Council on Physical Fitness under George W. Bush. He showed that bodybuilding could create leaders, not just incredible bodies. One of Lee's trademarks was his consistency. Across 8 straight wins, there was never any doubt. He earned that throne every time. He didn't win because the competition was weak. He won because he kept evolving. Every year, he came back sharper, more mature, more complete. No drama, no scandals, just pure, steady dedication to the craft. And even after retiring from competition, Lee Haney has remained a respected and admired figure in the sport. His legacy goes way beyond trophies. It's a lesson in how to balance strength with wisdom, confidence with humility, and ambition with values. He inspired a generation that didn't just want to be big, they wanted to be well-rounded. And that influence is still felt today, in gyms and on stages all over the world. If Lee Haney was the symbol of harmony, Dorian Yates was the embodiment of silent brutality. With 6 straight Mr. Olympia titles from 1992 to 1997, he kicked off what became known as the Mass Monster era. Yates exploded onto the global scene like some underground beast from England. Cold, intense, and packing a level of muscular density that seemed almost unreal. Dorian didn't smile on stage. He didn't put on a show. He walked out, hit his poses, stunned the audience, and won. His physique was unlike anything people had seen before. He looked like he was carved out of stone. Every muscle fiber was thick, deep, and rock solid. And those back muscles? They completely redefined what size and depth meant in bodybuilding. He had no visible weak points, just a wall of pure, unfiltered muscle. All of that came from a radical training approach. While most champs trained with high volume, Yates swore by maximum intensity with fewer sets, a method known as HIIT, high-intensity training. Every set was treated like it could be his last. Every rep was a war, and he documented everything in detailed training logs. For him, the stage was just a reflection of the work done in the shadows of the gym. Another part of the legend? The isolation. Yates didn't live in sunny California. He didn't train in packed gyms surrounded by fans. He didn't party with the bodybuilding crowd. He stayed in Birmingham, England, grinding away in near anonymity. So when he showed up at the Olympia, it felt like a gladiator emerging from the catacombs to wipe out the competition. That lone wolf image only made his impact more intense. And here's the wild part. Dorian didn't need charisma. His physique was the charisma. When he flared out those lats for the first time at the Olympia, the crowd went dead silent. There was no comeback. He wasn't just better, he was terrifyingly better. No judge dared to deny what was right in front of them. He dominated for 6 years, until injuries from pushing his body so far finally forced him to retire. Even off stage, Dorian remains influential. These days, he's more of a philosopher of bodybuilding. He speaks openly about mental health, self-awareness, mindful eating, and even spirituality. A massive shift from the stoic warrior of the 90s. But it shows that behind the armor was a curious and restless mind. A man who pushed his body to the edge, but never stopped asking why it all mattered. In a world where size seemed to be everything, Frank Zane proved that beauty could be even more powerful. Three-time Mr. Olympia from 1977 to 1979, he didn't win by sheer mass, but by possibly having the most admired physique in bodybuilding history. His body looked like a living Greek statue. Every muscle perfectly placed, mathematically balanced proportions, crystal clear definition, and a presence that pulled you in. He was pure art in the middle of a war. Zane beat giants with nothing but aesthetics. He showed that symmetry, clean lines, and total body control could take down even the biggest mass monsters. While others aimed for shock value, he went for harmony. Smooth shoulders, razor-tight waist, sculpted abs. No excess, no overkill, just precision. That's why to this day, his physique is considered one of the most beautiful ever to hit the stage. But his edge wasn't just physical, it was mental. Frank Zane was a student of the body, the mind, and peak performance. He used visualization, breathing techniques, meditation, and laser focus before competing. Every pose was intentional. On stage, his movements were controlled, almost poetic. He didn't just show his muscles. He interpreted them, as if telling a story with his body. Zane was also a master of presentation. His posing routines had carefully chosen music, smooth transitions, and expressive facial control. He brought a level of sophistication to the stage that turned posing from a muscle display into an art performance. Plenty of athletes today try to replicate that style, but few manage to capture the same aura. What's ironic is that behind that polished appearance was a fierce competitor. Frank was ultra-disciplined, obsessive with his diet, and relentless in his training. He knew that to maintain that level of definition and proportion, every detail mattered. He was a true scientist of aesthetics. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to touch perfection or get as close to it as humanly possible. Even after decades, Frank Zane's impact still resonates. Many see his physique as the blueprint for what bodybuilding should aim for, a fusion of strength, health, balance, and beauty. And when people talk about classic aesthetics, most of the time, they're picturing Frank Zane. He embodied an era where the most important look wasn't the biggest. It was the most beautiful. Before he even stepped on stage, Sergio Oliva commanded respect just by showing up. Nicknamed the Myth, and for good reason, he looked like something straight out of legend. His arms were so massive they looked like they'd been carved by the gods. His waist? Shockingly tight. His structure? Flat out superhuman. He was the first to show the world that the human body could go way beyond what anyone thought was possible. Born in Cuba and raised in hardship, Sergio built that physique while fleeing political oppression, and starting over in the U.S. bodybuilding became his new identity, and he became a force of nature. From 1967 to 1969, he owned the Mr. Olympia stage, and in 1969, he made history as the only man ever to beat Arnold Schwarzenegger in an Olympia final. That alone says it all. Beating Arnold at his peak? That's a level few could even dream of. On stage, Sergio was pure intimidation. All he had to do was hit his signature V pose, arms wide open, and the audience froze. His lats looked like wings. His shoulders flared out like boulders, and his chest was enormous. But what really shocked people was how fluidly he moved, despite his sheer size. It was like watching a tank gracefully dance. No athlete before him had ever delivered that kind of visual impact. His rivalry with Arnold gave us some of the most legendary moments in bodybuilding history. Fire versus fire, ego versus ego, but also deep respect between two titans. Sergio was explosive, instinctive, raw. Arnold was calculated and tactical. That contrast made for epic showdowns and helped turn the Olympia into the event to watch. And while Arnold went on to win more titles, Sergio will always be remembered as the man who dared to challenge and defeat the legend. Offstage, Sergio's life was full of ups and downs. He worked as a police officer in Chicago, got caught in controversies, and spent years away from the spotlight. But when he returned in the 80s, even without major wins, it was clear the fire still burned. He didn't compete just for trophies. He competed for pride, for identity. He was a gladiator who never lost his edge. Today, the name Sergio Oliva still carries serious weight, not just because of his physique, but because of the cultural impact he made. He was one of the first black athletes to break through in a sport still dominated by white competitors, and that meant something. He opened doors. He proved that talent, drive, and power know no color. And he inspired generations, including his own son, Sergio Oliva Jr., who proudly followed in his footsteps. Winning the Mr. Olympia is a feat reserved for a few, but dethroning Ronnie Coleman at his peak? That felt impossible. Yet Jay Cutler did exactly that. With 4 Olympia titles to his name, 2006, 2007, 2009, and 2010, he didn't just make history, he carved it in muscle. Jay was the relentless warrior, the tireless challenger, the guy who came close again and again before finally conquering the throne with grit and glory. For years, Jay lived in Ronnie's shadow, always the runner-up. But instead of breaking down, he turned every loss into fuel. And when his moment finally came, he showed up with a freakish physique, huge, dense, dry, and incredibly balanced. Jay embodied the new era of mass with control. Massive, yet polished. Monstrous, but with finesse. That kind of balance? Rare. One of Jay's biggest strengths was his professional, down-to-earth attitude. He treated bodybuilding like a business, but never lost his humility. Always friendly with fans, active online even before social media exploded, always at events, sharing tips and behind-the-scenes moments of the athlete life. Jay helped make the champ relatable, breaking the mold of the unreachable, untouchable Mr. Olympia. He was also one of the first to truly grasp the power of personal branding. He launched his own supplement line, built a content empire, and managed his public image with real savvy. Even after retiring, he's remained a major voice in the fitness world. You still see him everywhere, at expos, in interviews, and in every serious conversation about the sport. Jay became a symbol of longevity and future-minded thinking in bodybuilding. And let's not forget the 2009 comeback. After losing the title in 2008, most people counted him out. But Jay came back better and won the Olympia again with an even more insane physique. He became the first Mr. Olympia ever to reclaim the title after losing it. That moment proved not just his ability to evolve, but his guts to keep pushing when everyone else thought he was done. Visually, Jay Cutler was a powerhouse. Massive arms, a wide chest, and perfectly sculpted legs. But his real trademark was that balance between size and flow. Even at over 270 pounds, around 122 kilograms, he never looked sloppy. He was a carefully crafted colossus, and that made him one of the most respected bodybuilders ever, even among people who aren't into the mass monster look. If there were a contest for living sculptures, Phil Heath would win it hands down. His physique was so detailed, so full of deep cuts and clean separations, it looked like it had been assembled piece by piece, like a 3D masterpiece. With 7 Mr. Olympia titles from 2011 to 2017, he wasn't just a champion. He was a perfectionist made of muscle. Even standing next to giants, his definition was so insane it looked like his muscles were about to leap out of his skin. They called him the Gift, and honestly, it felt like he was genetically engineered for bodybuilding. Round cannonball shoulders, thick arms, dense chest, 3D back, and carved legs. But what really set him apart was his muscle separation. Each group popped individually, like they were being displayed one at a time. Watching him pose was like attending a live anatomy class. But it wasn't just genetics. Phil had insane discipline in the gym and in the kitchen. He knew that with a physique that detailed, even the tiniest flaw would show under the lights. So he trained like a hypertrophy surgeon, focusing on every angle, every body part, every millimeter of symmetry. He wasn't just chasing trophies. He was sculpting a masterpiece. His reign was pure dominance. For years, nobody could touch him. Sure, people criticized his confidence. Some called it arrogance, but Phil kept winning. And maybe a little ego was necessary to hold that kind of ground. Being a 7-time consecutive champ takes more than muscle. It takes pressure management, mental toughness, and the ability to be constantly judged by the entire world. His stage presence was theatrical, almost provocative. He knew how insane his physique looked, and he made the most of it with sharp poses and bold expressions. Some fans loved it, others rolled their eyes, but no one could ignore it. He was a commanding force, polarizing but undeniably powerful on stage. Even after losing the title in 2018, Phil stayed in the spotlight. He took part in competitions, launched fitness projects, and built a solid brand in supplements and motivational speaking. His name still comes up in any serious talk about the greatest of all time. And while the critics were loud, so were his legions of fans, many of whom saw him as the absolute pinnacle of muscle perfection. If size were everything, Franco Columbia would have never won the Mr. Olympia. But he did, Astor's twice star. Standing just 5 feet 5 inches, 1.65 meters, he proved that greatness goes far beyond height. His physique was compact, dense, and insanely strong. More than just a bodybuilder, he was a force of nature, a guy who could carry refrigerators on his back, compete in strongman events, and still walk on stage looking like a carved statue. Born in Sardinia, Italy, Franco started out in boxing, then moved into Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting. That journey built him into a powerhouse, able to go head-to-head with guys twice his size. He could deadlift over 700 pounds, 320 kilograms, bench more than 485 pounds, 220 kilograms, and was famous for his ridiculous endurance. And all of that in a body that most said was too small for the Olympia stage. But what he lacked in height, he made up for with symmetry, muscle density, and warrior-level intensity. His physique was like a block of granite, solid with no weak spots. Thick chest, compact arms, shredded abs. On stage, Franco had presence. And when he posed next to bigger athletes, he often stole the spotlight. Not with size, but with sheer energy and command. One of the most iconic parts of his journey was his legendary friendship with Arnold Schwarzenegger. They trained together, competed together, supported each other like brothers. Arnold was the charismatic giant. Franco the relentless underdog. It balanced each other out, and their bond shaped not just bodybuilding, but also movies and pop culture. They starred in films together, did commercials, and turned their friendship into one of the greatest symbols of the Golden Era. Franco won the Mr. Olympia in 1976 and shockingly came back in 1981 to win it again, 5 years later. It was a controversial win, but it showed his grit and resilience. He didn't fear challenges, or giants, or time. Franco was driven by the need to overcome, and that spirit has inspired athletes across the globe. Outside the stage, he was a chiropractor, author, speaker, and a constant figure in the fitness world. He had brains, charm, and a real love for the sport. Even after retiring, he kept training until the very end, literally. His death in 2019 left a huge void for fans and friends alike, especially Arnold, who shared a heartfelt tribute to his best friend of all time. Lou Ferrigno might just be the most iconic bodybuilder to never win a Mr. Olympia, and that says a lot about the impact he made, both inside and far beyond the sport. Standing 6 feet 5 inches, 1.96 meters, and weighing over 290 pounds, 130 kilograms. At his peak, Lou was a straight-up giant. But what truly made him legendary was his presence. He wasn't just an athlete, he was a mythical figure. The world came to know him as the Incredible Hulk, but the bodybuilding community had been worshiping him long before the green paint. He rose to global fame through the iconic documentary Pumping Iron, standing toe-to-toe with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That film cast him as the underdog in a Flip David versus Goliath story, with Lou as the giant, trying to dethrone the already legendary Arnold. Their rivalry, packed with charisma, captivated the audience and helped turn bodybuilding into entertainment. And even without the title, Lou won something even rarer, people's hearts. His physique was massive, but still aesthetically pleasing. Wide shoulders, thick arms, insane back width. He looked like a real-life superhero, and that image carried him straight to television, where he starred as the Hulk from 1977 to 1982. For an entire generation, that was the Hulk. No CGI, just Lou Ferrigno in the flesh. That blend of raw muscle and pop culture helped bring weight training to the mainstream around the globe. But Lou's journey wasn't smooth. He grew up with significant hearing loss, which deeply affected his childhood and social life. Still, he turned that challenge into fuel. He found power in the gym and healing on stage. His story is one of resilience, of never backing down, even when the odds were stacked against him. The iron became his outlet, and the stage his platform to show the world what he was made of. Lou even attempted a comeback in the 90s, stepping on the Olympia stage in 1992 and 1993, proving that his love for the sport never faded. And long after his prime, he kept training, attending events, mentoring athletes, and holding his ground as one of the sport's most recognizable figures. Very few athletes remain relevant for decades. Lou is one of those rare few. Today, the name Lou Ferrigno stands for strength, perseverance, and inspiration. He bridged the gap between sport and entertainment, moved millions with his larger-than-life presence, and showed that true greatness doesn't always come with a trophy. He earned something no judge could ever award, the status of a global icon. And that's why he closes out this list as one of the most beloved bodybuilders of all time. So tell me, which one of these bodybuilders do you think is the most epic? It was tough picking just 10, and yeah, there are definitely other legends who could have made this list. But the coolest part is seeing how each of them left their mark in a totally unique way. Whether through insane strength, flawless aesthetics, next-level charisma, sheer grit, or cultural impact that went way beyond the stage. These guys didn't just sculpt their bodies, they helped shape bodybuilding as we know it today. If you enjoyed this video and love diving deep into the stories that shape generations, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and keeps us motivated to bring you even more high-quality content. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Click that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because here we talk legends, training, behind-the-scenes stories, and everything that makes this sport so damn inspiring. Oh, And if you want to go even further and be part of our inner circle, consider becoming a channel member. You'll help us keep doing what we love and get some awesome perks too. Now tell me in the comments, who do you think should have been on this list? Jay, Ronnie, Arnold, Zane, Sergio, Phil, they all have die-hard fans. And your take is more than welcome around here. Thanks for sticking with us until the end. See you in the next video. And remember, the real legacy isn't just in the body, it's in the way we inspire others. Appreciate you.